This is ContactTalkRadio.com. Consciousness in action. And you are taking action into your consciousness by tuning into Contact Talk Radio.
And on TuneIn.com, Ping.fm, and UpSnap Mobile.
Contact Talk Radio.
Welcome to What the Health, an independent approach to your health span. Have you noticed how our healthcare system may not have your best interest in mind? Join Dr. Eckel in this fun and sometimes disturbing exploration of the state of healthcare and what it means for you. Now, here's your host, Dr. Eckel.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. This is What the Health, and I am Dr. Greg Eckel, and today we have a really fun topic. We are talking low-level laser therapy and what it is and how it works. And I've got some experts coming at you here, and I want to introduce them because this is going to be a fun discussion. We've got Jennifer Miele. Specializes in medical research and nutrition with extensive studies and over 18 years of experience in the integrative health field. Her approaches include functional medicine to immunology, photodynamic therapies, among others. She's the director of Nube Health Inc., and she's the co-founder of Baja Medgate in Baja California, Mexico, as well as the U.S. partner with Weber Medical, dedicated to ongoing research, education, and training, basically on light therapy, photobiomodulation. She also holds an honoris causa doctorate through Mexico City in the area of medical research, and she's doing some really amazing research in Mexico. And we also have Nurse Andreanna Rainville, and she's a practicing nurse and certified herbalist. She brings over 20 years of experience to a wide range of patient care issues with many interventions, therapies, and techniques. She understands the complexities of managing disease and advocates for a more livable approach to patient care above all. Her philosophy prioritizes tolerable therapies, better symptom management, easier compliance. I mean, these are all, who wouldn't want these things, right? Psychological support, improved education, leading to informed choices for patients and their families. She holds specialties in the field of German functional medicine, photodynamic therapies, ART, among many more. So you too, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
In harmony, one more time. Thank you.
Yes, you are welcome. You know, I've had so many great conversations with Jennifer before we got on here. So I'm so excited to get you on the show and share you with the What the Health community. You know, I have been saying, you know, the future of medicine is, it's not just me, but, you know, the future of medicine is in light and sound. And there's some really exciting things that you're going to share today. We've got, you know, how to use light and laser therapy for brain health, for longevity, and as an antiviral agent, among other health benefits. So I guess let's start out, because a lot of times people just get intimidated by the word laser. So what is low-level laser therapy?
That's actually a very good question. So first, we want to thank you for having us on the show. And Nurse Andy and I have done this little banter back and forth where we kind of explain how we both utilize the technology in our own facilities and practices, and we also work together in training, et cetera. So for most of the listeners, most people would think of light therapy or laser therapy or photodynamic therapy as something that is usually they connect with cosmetics or laser hair removal, right? Most people hear that and think that direction. In the integrative kind of alternative health field, people are starting to look at, you know, these LED devices and infrared devices that are used for lower back pain or hair regrowth. But it's so much more than that. You know, going way, way, way back into the early 1900s, even in Russia and US, actually, there were different types of laser therapy, which are different. LEDs are light emitting diodes, and lasers are a different type of diode with a coherent light. So it can penetrate much deeper into the body, into the human tissue. So laser therapy or light therapy has been around for centuries. One of the most important things we forget is just going out in the sun and getting the full spectrum of light. And we put all these things on to protect ourselves, where our bodies actually need the light absorption. So laser therapy, or low-level laser therapy, is using a medical or light health device which is in a low enough power that it doesn't burn or cut the skin, yet it penetrates deeply enough to get an effect to the body. So what that means is each color of light actually affects a different part of the body, which is really interesting. Yellow light, for example, enhances serotonin, dopamine production, enhances vitamin D production. Blue light is an amazing antimicrobial, antifungal, antibacterial, antiviral. Same with ultraviolet light. Ultraviolet light's been used for years in dental offices. I mean, the history of low-level laser or light therapy has been around, again, since the early 1900s, everywhere from topical applications to intravenous applications to transcranial, cranial applications to even direct injections to areas. And it has been evolving through the years all the way to using devices in home care and also using devices in medical practices, both in the traditional and the integrative alternative. Did that kind of answer a little bit?
Yeah, that's very helpful. We don't really think of all of the spectrum of light therapeutically, right? There's a buzz about red light therapy right now, but having all of the other, the spectrum makes sense.
It does. Having the whole spectrum makes a ton of sense. And what's really kind of fun, and Andy, you can jump in on this one when you want, but the power of light is really quite amazing. It's one of the most interesting kind of therapies out there, and how it works with different pathogens. So we can use it in dermatology. We have applications. I mean, it's being utilized right now everywhere from dermatology to regenerative medicine to skin issues of dermatology, to chronic pain, to neurodegenerative, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, post-traumatic stress syndrome. It's also being utilized for people that have had blood clots that want to reduce lymphatic inflammation or vascular inflammation. It's being used to increase energy. We have people reporting benefits with rebalancing high blood pressure. I mean, and the only true is it's not actually making all these things go away or get better. What it's doing is giving light energy back to the body. So light is energy, and our bodies need energy. So we look at this from a scientific perspective, or we look at this from like an energy medicine perspective. We can actually explain both from physics or from energy medicine. And that's the really fun part about this. You can bridge two worlds together. So the doubters can see the science and the scientists can see the energy part of it. It's really quite fun.
Oh, interesting. So that is a wide variety of applications. Let's talk in specifically, let's talk about brain health. And then we talked about before on the show, some things around the antiviral aspect. So I want to make sure though we dive into how does this, really get into, how does it get into the brain? How does it help the brain? What's the research showing? What maybe some case studies or stories that you've got?
I'm going to have Nurse Andy jump in here because we both have some pretty fun stories to share on that one. So
awesome.
Yeah, one of the most amazing things about laser light is that more is not always better. A lot of times we think, oh, more power. And it doesn't quite work that way, because as you get into higher amounts of power, you create more heat and you can have more burning, and it's not necessarily getting to the area you want. So when we're trying to get into the brain, what's kind of amazing is that if you're using infrared light and red light, infrared's going to penetrate through the skull and actually about 8 centimeters into the brain matter itself. And so at first, when you start to do this, it's amazing, because I've done this from children to adults, from autism to Alzheimer's, basically, and a lot of things in between. And it's amazing how you start to send the light through the cranium. And what happens is the joules, the energy starts building up into that brain matter. So you give more oxygen, you give more circulation, you give more actual fuel to those cells so that they can detox and repair, but also so they can connect information. You know, that neuroplasticity is what helps our brains do the job they're supposed to do, but also we can encourage that along with other growth factors, whether they're peptides or BDNF, and actually create new cells in our brain. And there's a lot of research that, you know, we try to be very judicial in looking at NIH and WHO. Like if those folks are, you know, fairly conservative. So if they're showing studies, you could really be safe behind saying, well, this is what it shows, because it's a very, you know, non-offensive group. What can you say?
Depends on who you're talking to.
Well, you know, but yes, this is true. But it's been amazing from, you know, looking at actual cognitive objective screens and being able to see that, yes, language is enhanced. You know, the MoCA is a great screen tool because, you know, as humans, our brains forget. You know, we're designed to look for what's bad and what's out there to get us and what's going to, you know, what do we need to survive as a species? Instead of, oh, this improved and that's doing better. And wow, I'm sleeping better. And I'm remembering phone numbers that I haven't used in forever and a day. So, you know, it's helpful sometimes to use objective screenings for yourself or with your patients to, you know, kind of be able to see that, yes, we're actually watching these changes happen. And we were blessed to, at the last ISLA conference, which was, you know, a ways back, but Dr. James Laporte is a cancer specialist in South Africa. He had done a really interesting thing where he put a quantitative electroencephalography, an EEG. So it's a picture of what our brain is actually doing while then putting on the light helmet that was irradiating the brain. And what was super interesting is he shows, you know, I do a lot of neurofeedback with children and adults, and it's an amazing tool. So he was watching the brain in real time, and it actually stopped, like all the wavelengths stopped and then popped into a theta, which is considered like God consciousness.
Wow.
And like, it's what everybody, you know, every meditator strives for. And we're just like, what? That just did that on its own with just giving it light to do it. It was one of my favorite moments of the conference was that little video snippet.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
Well, yeah. We see things like this all the time, you know, especially with Alzheimer's and post-traumatic stress syndrome and even Parkinson's, we've seen it. So what Dr. Weber did is he has this, I mean, photodynamic therapy, again, there's so many different companies out there making these light devices, but we've been working with the Weber technology for a while. It's German technology, amazing technology, right? And he's very dedicated to the research aspect of how these things work. So he created this kind of helmet device, literally looks like a bike helmet. And it's full infrared light, so it can penetrate quite deeply into the skull. And as Nurse Andy was just sharing, this physician out of South Africa was treating quite a few different Alzheimer's patients, but he was doing something before using the infrared helmet, which was giving these people ECGC or green tea extract. Helps with some of the neurotransmitter reprogramming, helps with some of the stimulation. Also, different natural agents actually can absorb certain spectrums of light, which is something very interesting. So the listeners who are listening to this, any kind of light therapy device you have, if you're using curcumin or vitamin B2 or green tea extract or whatever the natural substance all the way to vitamin C might be, all these different natural agents actually work to help your body more susceptible or sensitive to a certain spectrum of light, which is for a California term, it's very cool. Yeah. Scientific term, it's quite neat because you can get instead of taking 500 milligrams of curcumin, when you pair it with light therapy, you could actually get almost, you know, maybe double that amount of benefit from it. Or as saying, sometimes more is not always better, as we say, and we know you can do a lower dose of something and potentialize the effect. And that's what they're seeing with the combination in some of these neurodegenerative issues with people, or even after strokes, using the helmet for these things.
Awesome. Now, Nurse Andy, you mentioned ISLA. So what is that conference that you saw that at? What is that?
So ISLA is the International Laser Conference, and it's basically different practitioners from all over the world coming together and sharing their information on different research, whether it's antimicrobial research. There's a lot of amazing research with cancer application, with Alzheimer's, with dementia, with autism, etc. And so it's a fantastic way for, everybody who's interested in laser light to come and share their data with each other, to get inspired to see how can we apply this both in the home setting as well as in the clinical setting. And so we just have so much fun at it. And in fact, we've got Dr. Weber is often a key component because he's just so inspired with the research end of things that it's always him and a team of international lecturers that are presenting the most recent findings across the board. And it's coming up, I believe the next one is this upcoming weekend in Germany, but they are, also broadcasting it over the internet as well.
Oh,
in
awesome.
person as
And
well
we
as
will, for lay public and practitioners, we're going to put that link in the show notes. So if you are interested in taking that next step in laser therapy and kind of get the cutting edge information, here's your opportunity. So this was well timed for us to have you on today.
It was wonderful. And thank you for that, because you don't have to be a practitioner to get on and listen to these videos. And something that's important about the ISLA conference that's coming up that's virtual is most people will think the time difference, it being in Germany, but everything's recorded. So you can either listen to it live or you can go back and have access to the videos for, months on end to re-look at things and review images and presentations. And it's quite fun.
Perfect.
And it is in English, which is helpful because many of the German conferences are not. And so I always appreciate that about the team over there.
Yeah. Now, you did bring up the kind of the quality of light, and I don't see a lot of people speak about this. So you brought up the German technology in particular, but are there differences of like good light, bad light, as far as these devices go, and what's on the market? And, I'm just going to lob that to you and see where that goes.
Andy, do you want to go on that one, or both of us?
Sure, let's both do it. I mean, I think that you really have to look at, laser itself is often using a gemstone as part of the diode. So there's, if you go to buy a diamond, there's a huge variety of quality that you can choose from. Some are higher, some are lower. With LED, that technology has changed drastically throughout the years. So we often see people who've been using the same diode that was, built 20 years ago, which is not the same as where technology has taken us today. And, who's building it makes a difference. If you have sweat labor happening in China, it's not the same as an adult putting it together in another country. So there's those variations. And then, we're starting to get into, the coherence of light is really critical. So a laser beam can, it's a very powerful tool, but it's coherent. So that's very different than LED, which is a more of a spread kind of diffuse. So it's going to not absorb as deeply just by the nature of its physics. It's like a wave. And so how it comes into the, which isn't huge if you're trying to treat like acne on the skin, which we see a lot of, lasers, blue light in particular, ultraviolet red are very popular for skin conditions because it doesn't need to go that deep. What's amazing with Dr. Weber is he's like, well, instead of just, trying to get into the bloodstream or get into a joint, like let's use a fiber optic and put it in your vein or put it in your knee or put it in your shoulder along with, exosomes or stem cells or whatever people are using. So it's just it's a personal choice really, and kind of quality control. Because I mean, all of us know you can buy a cap off of Alibaba, but is it really what you want to put on your head and affect your brain?
Right. Yeah. Well put.
Well, I mean, I'm a nurse, so I'm working with families a lot of time, and they're like, well, why should I pay this for this? And it's like, well, why should you pay extra for organic versus conventional food? Like, there's a longer term effect of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've answered that question quite a few times, so it's a pretty easy one now, but it's a very important one.
Love it.
Very important one.
Let's talk about the different applications. So, we're talking topical for skin stuff, IV therapy. You talked about a helmet. What are the different reasons? In particular, my interest is the IV. So that maybe we could start with that.
Okay. So I guess we should probably do a little summary for the listeners that don't know kind of what's available, right? But there is a professional device that Dr. Weber and the team designed, which was a device that's FDA approved for topical applications for pain. But that topical application for pain was used as laser acupuncture and laser topical applications, meaning that you could choose a specific point on the body, just like an acupuncture point, but without penetrating through the skin with a needle, an acupuncture needle, you would do it with a very direct, focused beam of laser light through a fiber optic cable with a metal tip. So it hits the same acupoint, gives a ton of concentrated joules of energy of light to one specific point without having to do the actual acupuncture side of things. But then Dr. Weber knew about all these other applications as well, so created the same device to have other options. So it's a versatile system. So in addition to just being topical acupoints, there's a little shower head and a little handle that those fiber optic cables can be thread through, either for like topical points on the shoulder or on a back injury or a knee, and then even a step further, even oral applications for people that, for example, if you want to do an IV, you can't do an IV. But then most of, alternative health practitioners or even people aware of the integrative field have heard of ultraviolet blood irradiation.
Yeah.
But we know that technically the human body, a healthy body anyway, should have around every 16 minutes, we should have the full system of blood passing through our peripheral vein system. So our blood should be pumping around every 16 minutes, our full blood volume. However, some people who have inflammatory issues, other chronic infection, that's not always 100%, but it's a guideline. So Dr. Weber decided that if he could find a way to thread through an IV catheter, like you're doing an IV vitamin C, for example, and you could thread a sterile fiber optic line directly into that catheter, and the light would transduce through that line into the bloodstream in your vein, and your blood is pumping through, your volume is pumping through, you're getting an intravenous blood irradiation of light. And they were doing this in Russia, going back again to like the early 1900s, with red light mainly. But it wasn't a more traditionally known therapy, right? So that's why Dr. Weber decided, okay, instead of taking the blood out, passing it through a machine, let's come up with something where we're going in an intravenous application through a regular catheter that's used for an IV vitamin C. So he created a fiber optic line that can be threaded through and done as an IV application. Then he took it a step further and used the same type of fiber optic line to do an injection perspective. So you could do a PRP injection or exosomes or stem cells into a knee injury, and you could actually thread the fiber optic line through that needle and irradiate directly to that particular area of injection and enhance the PRP, platelet-rich plasma, the cell activity, or just enhance the blood flow to the area, reduce inflammatory process. And then you could actually choose the color and the diode of how you wanted to address that specific area. So then there started being studies done anywhere from oncology to chronic infection. So we did a lot of work with like Epstein-Barr virus, Lyme disease, chronic infections, viral issues with intravenous ultraviolet and blue light, and also started doing studies with using certain IV substances that would potentiate the effect. And we would see viral loads just drop very quickly. Of course, we know that living and working in a clinic full time with my business partner and seeing how our patients respond, how people respond. Our habits are really important. So don't expect the light therapy to like all of a sudden it's a miracle. It is amazing, but you got to put some work into. Just remember, guys. So that is kind of the different application on the professional system, on the different ways it can be used. Apart from that, there's transcranial, where you can use the same points along transcranial points for neurological issues. And Andy's actually showing you right there.
You can kind of see what a fiber optic looks like.
Oh, yeah. Oh, excellent.
That
So
cable,
that could be like the acupuncture.
Mhm.
Wow.
And you can see, I mean, it's quite powerful. It actually illuminates all the way through very easily through the hand.
Nurse Andy, you are a light being. There you go.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
I love it. Love it. Well, that's awesome. I mean, there are so many different routes to go. You brought up the antiviral effects. So let's talk about that. I mean, we've got kind of the never-ending pandemic, and going into winter with it's going to be another rough one. What are you finding there, just in viruses in general? So antiviral effects and infections. What is the research showing? What are you guys seeing clinically? There's some studies on COVID outside of the country. So let's talk about that.
So in clinic, when doing intravenous applications, we have done our own studies everywhere from private independent studies to see the effects on HIV, to cytomegalovirus, to Epstein-Barr virus. There was a study that Dr. Weber and his team did outside of the country as well for focusing on malaria. And again, all of these studies showed a reduction in viral loads, PCR testing going negative.
Wow.
And the biggest thing was, how long was it lasting? And in some, we were seeing it last for a very, very long time. Others would get a recurrence. They'd have to redo treatment and it would be gone again. And then this whole pandemic popped up. So, I mean, the results when it came to antiviral and infections was honestly very impressive and quite amazing.
Wow.
But when the pandemic came up, Dr. Weber wanted to come up with some kind of study to see if it affected the COVID issue. So he got a study approved outside of the country, and he personally was the one that applied this study. And they did 5 days of treatment. He designed a device that would not have to be intravenous, that would be done through intranasal, oral, and use riboflavin, which is vitamin B2, because many studies were being done with other type of photosensitizers and antivirals that many people were a little bit more skeptical of or scared of. So vitamin B2 is a vitamin, right? It's riboflavin. Simple thing. So most people aren't going to be scared of it. So we created it to be a capsule that you take orally. You also gargle and swallow, and you do a nasal spray. And then an ultraviolet and blue light device that Nurse Andy's showing you on her screen.
There
It goes
it is.
to the nose. So it does the nasal, intranasal irradiation, because we have micro blood vessels in the nose that can actually help to absorb systemically. And then intraoral, because of where this virus sits, and also the lymph glands and into the back of the throat, just sits in the mouth. So this is a way to try to affect the virus without getting a bunch of people into clinics, because of the restrictions. They couldn't get people into clinics doing IVs, not at that time.
Wow.
So after 5 days of doing this consecutively, all PCR testing actually went negative, and also viral loads went completely down into normal range, inflammatory numbers dropped, and the most significant thing to the team was that most of the post-COVID symptomology that people feel, that fatigue, exhaustion, lack of being able to breathe normally, that kind of like eyes feeling uncomfortable, none of them that actually did the treatment, at least 85–90% of them all felt no symptomology afterwards, which was impressive.
Wow. Yeah.
So the same study is now going on in a hospital in Mexico City as well. They're doing some studies outside of the country. They're working on getting this going as well. And all of us, because we want to see if there's alternative options that can actually help someone through it, even better, right?
Yeah.
That was impressive. And that little thing actually attached to an already existing device that Dr. Weber had, which was a Spectra laser watch, which was a colored little laser watch that's used on the wrist for acupoints, but can also be used on any part of the body as a home care device. So he just created a UV blue attachments to go with something that was already existing to give people an option at home. Or
Oh, that's awesome.
it was very awesome.
And what's nice is you can use, I don't want to like shine, but you can kind of see it's set up where it's basically like irradiating your blood. And
yeah.
so you're getting a systemic effect as well as the local effect. And because it's non-invasive, kids are happy to use it. And what was brilliant on Weber's part is they also came up with a sterilization box. So after one family member does their treatment, you can simply pop it into a little UV box that sterilizes it before the next family member or, you know, whomever needs to use it. And we were thrilled that we had one because, you know, our college, my niece is off in college and she's caught in COVID like twice. And, you know, she comes home for the holidays and we love her dearly and welcome her, but also want to keep everybody as free as possible.
Right. Sure. Wow, that's awesome. So, and those devices, those are available in the United States?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Actually, there's they're available on the website, which is weberlaser.com, and there's even a code set up for your show to offer people a discount, the whole thing.
I love it. Yes. So I really appreciate that. If you're interested in this technology, you can go to that website, which is in the show notes, and put in the code NCC and you will get a 5% discount, which is really, we're very grateful for that. And because it really is, you know, having these therapies that we can have at home. I mean, over the last 18 months, it has become more and more evident, like we need more therapies like this. That's some impressive results. Now, was that study published on the 5 days?
There is a partial study that has already been published that we can actually send to you and the listeners can actually see. The current study that's going is still in process. The results are coming in, but it's still in process. But we can certainly share the other one with you so you can share it with listeners so they can see it.
Awesome.
It's still in study, but so far what's being seen is impressive. It's exciting. You know?
That is really exciting. Really exciting.
And I think what was the most exciting thing about the laser watch is when I first got into this, you're running an alternative health clinic out of country where we're a research-based clinic. We don't work with very many people at one time. We work with people like yourself, Dr. Eckel, and Nurse Andy to try to offer the most innovative protocols on a per patient basis. It's not much fun when you yourself end up getting sick. So, and that happened to me. I was actually on a long flight, you know, working in our clinic almost, you know, 6, almost sometimes 7 days a week. And I ended up developing a blood clot years ago in one of my legs that was so bad that the Doppler ultrasound showed complete blockage.
Whoa.
And my business partner actually looked at me and said, why don't you use Dr. Weber's laser watch on your leg? And I was thinking, well, duh, that actually makes sense. It doesn't have to be used on the wrist, right?
Right.
Connected a little pad that comes with the watch, put it on the back of the leg where the blood clot was sitting, follow the Doppler ultrasound imaging to the back of the knee. Did this for about 2.5, 3 hours every night for about 3 days, approximately 3 or 4 days. You know, the leg swelling went down, the purple tone went down, the pain went down. I did not take blood thinners. I did everything naturally. Went back in 3 days later for a follow-up ultrasound. And even the radiologist looked at me and said, Jen, you know, come on, you really, there's not going to be any difference. Just give it a week or two. I said, no, just humor me. Look at the inflammation. It's almost gone. There was an 80% improvement in blood flow, and his jaw kind of dropped and said, what did you do? So I looked at my business partner, I said, I think you're on to something, you know?
Yeah.
Sometimes we have to remember we can use these amazing devices and tools we have in so many different ways that the uses are kind of unlimited. So that's really quite exciting.
That is really exciting. Yeah, it is. It's very potent. And I think sometimes when there's so many applications, it's kind of hard to know, like, okay, I'm going to use this now, right? For this thing versus, well, I could use it for all of these things. So it sometimes gets, you know, it kind of puts you into a paralysis of analysis or too many options. So So speaking of that, let's bring it back around to brain health here. So will you talk about and share the effects of the Weber helmet and transcranial light therapy? And this might be new to our listeners. You know, I've spoken about the Buckethead Challenge coming out of Tasmania in the past, and which is like they started putting LED lights in buckets and showing some benefits for Parkinson's disease. A little bit crude, but we've got the experts on the line here. So let's hear what can we do for our brains.
Andy, you want to jump in there? I know we've had fun on this one.
Definitely. Well, I mean, I think we all have to look at what does our brain need? You know, it needs oxygenation, it needs circulation, it needs a clear path to let the toxins back out. And light helps with all of those things. And so it's that part of, and every single person I know who's above 25 or so, you know, right when your brain gets done developing, you start declining. And if you don't use it and you don't take care of it, it declines a lot faster. And some people have more genetics for that than others. And there have been so many personal experiences, but there's a lot of really good studies that actually show, you know, by applying light, you are definitely increasing circulation. You're increasing what are called reactive oxygen species, you know, so you're helping to kind of move things around. You're stimulating the immune system to get rid of things that don't belong there. You know, we know that sleep is such a critical, I mean, there's a reason we use sleep deprivation as torture in certain areas.
Right.
Because it ruins your quality of life if you can't sleep. And so by adding the light in, we're also finding a reset to that circadian rhythm and the sleep cycle, which is when our brains actually kind of shrink down so the glial lymphatics can kind of drain the different toxins out of it. And, you know, partially we've got a lot less exercise, a lot more toxins, a lot more stress, you know, so we haven't quite, I think, caught up evolutionary with all of what we have as options. So we need these techniques to kind of help our bodies keep up with all the things that we've been given in this time of life.
Yep.
And one of the other parts that's so interesting to me is the Japanese have done a lot of research on intranasal using red light up the nose and the microcirculation and how that affects your cardiovascular health. And as you know, women, we know that heart incidences have really jumped up in the cause of death for women over the last few decades. And so it's that part of how can we all keep, you know, that health going. And I just find it interesting. What I've seen with a lot of people too, is when you put the light up the nose, you know, the sphenopalatine is there, the pituitary, you know, your master hormone is there. So I love it when I have my little old guy that's like, hey, my hormones have really turned back on. And I'm like, yes, you're welcome for that. So it's, you know, it's thinking about like nothing is separate from anything. And so even if we're just doing one little thing, like putting it on our wrist for 20 minutes while we're doing our emails, that's moving ahead. And, you know, and again, it's like, how do we make it livable and simple? You know, for my kiddos in the clinic, they don't mind putting the helmet on and watching a video on YouTube or Netflix or whatever, you know? So it's like, how can we incorporate these things into our life in a way that we're not having to carve out, you know, 2 hours to go do therapy. We're just going to add the therapy to what we're doing. And that's one of the things I love about it.
Yeah, that's really outstanding, is just designing it into the lifestyle. That's great.
It is. It's something that can actually be kind of fun for people to use too, you know? So it's, and the results that you get are so rewarding feels so great. And the other thing too, with the brain health, even people that just want to improve cognitive function and increase ATP production and kind of help with the neurotransmitter stimulation, you can actually program into the Weber helmet different frequencies. It has a little box that controls frequency output. So you can go to beta, theta, different wavelengths, different patterns to kind of help the how you're wanting to utilize the helmet. So there's the one thing I don't think we touched on just photodynamic therapy is some of the things that are available.
Yeah.
There are a ton of devices out there. The ones that Dr. Weber specifically designed was the laser watch. Then the laser watch, the Spectra with the kit, which is the ultraviolet and blue application that comes with a little sterilizer and everything to keep it clean. Then there's also an infrared pad, which is utilized specifically for areas of pain. It's a small infrared light pad. And then there's the helmet, of course, which is an infrared helmet, infrared light helmet. And then it also comes with this frequency device. And then, as I said, apart from the kit, there's the Spectra laser watch. And there's supplements and things that he's designed as well. But, you know, all of that's on the site. They can look, ask questions. But
Wow.
I think one of the most exciting things in all of this is just, you know, some people forget you have a big, strong, beautiful light device right outside.
Right. The sun, is that what you're alluding to? The
Depends
yes.
on where some of us live, but yep,
It
it's
depends
right
on where you live, but it is up there. On brain health, so I know a lot of my listeners and viewers have brain health questions and concerns. Maybe they've watched their parents get into some cognitive decline or dementia, Alzheimer's. They might be wondering, can they prevent it for themselves? What in particular, I've been recommending the helmet as a great preventative, but also as a treatment. And so I'm wondering if you can talk about the preventative aspects of it, like how much somebody would have to wear it, and then maybe even on certain frequencies that could be utilized as well for enhancing cognitive performance.
Absolutely. No, we actually use it quite a bit for just preventative as well. Enhance cognitive function, assist with vascularity, assist with energy production. So we'll use sometimes green tea extract as a supplement right before using the helmet. And we have some people that are doing it that have a history in their family as either Alzheimer's or some other type of dementia. So they'll do things that will help brain health in general or longevity, supplement-wise, dietary-wise, and then use the helmet everywhere from, you know, maybe 2 days a week, 3 days a week, just as a preventative. And as Andy's saying, they can even sit there, whether watching something or reading a book, they can have the helmet on. It doesn't really keep them from doing things. As a preventative, we usually have people do that. They'll either go into a clinic and utilize it or have one at home and the whole family can use it. Mm-hmm. So it's not going to hurt, you know, anyone who wants to just enhance some light therapy to the body. And one thing that most of you might kind of laugh at is that the helmet is for the head, but we've even had people that will utilize that because it's, you know, 16 watts of power. It's quite a bit of infrared light that comes through that helmet, that have even put it, since it's a helmet kind of shape, over someone's knee when they have severe knee pain. So there's more than one way that the home can utilize the helmet, just to let you know.
Yeah.
But Andy, Nurse Andy can jump in here too, but one thing we've seen is minimum of 3 times a week of using that helmet, maybe 30 minutes, 3 times a week. It's just kind of a general preventative. It's just one option for people. Sure. Others do it every day. Some would do it a couple times a week. It really depends on what they're trying to accomplish.
Okay.
Another thing that we have to remember with our brains and cognitive function is that neurotransmitters, we make about 80% of them in the gut. And so a lot of my little kiddos also, I will have them put the helmet over their gut. And there's some really lovely studies that actually show the red and infrared light penetration into the gut helps to increase your diversity of your microbiome, or the bugs that live within your intestines that are making these neurotransmitters that help your brain communicate, whether it's, you know, having the desire to get up and do something, you know, our dopamine, serotonin levels, these things are very important for just motivating us to feel like doing the things that can help us be healthy.
Sure. That's great reminder, right? The gut is the second brain. We've got all kinds of information out on that. So put the lights on the belly as well. That's lovely.
Very true.
And then toxicity is the other big factor. So if we're putting it on our liver, we're putting it on our lymphatic pathways to kind of drain our heads, our kidneys. It's amazing how it's a very gentle, simple way that we're not seeing a lot of side effects that are, you take a medication or you take a supplement and you may or may not digest and assimilate that correctly. Whereas with light, it's a very forgiving modality.
Love it. All right. So now let's switch from kind of the reactive component of medicine and more into the proactive with the discussion that's near and dear to me, longevity. How do these devices fit in to a healthy aging proposition?
You mean people that are just that want to support an anti-aging longevity kind of perspective, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I guess the answer to that would be most of us have some kind of ache or pain or low energy, whether we feel pretty good or not, we have something that affects us, right? So light therapy, again, is energy and ATP and mitochondrial function. And we need energy for our bodies to regenerate, rejuvenate, and to function. And light therapy can give that back to us, whether it's in the case of a helmet, putting it on our wrists, putting it in our nasal area, putting it in our ears, or a pad on part of our body. It will give our body back that cellular energy that we need to keep the battery going. We usually kind of explain it of you expect, to plug a cell phone in and expect it never to have to be charged. Well, we need to eat food, right? We need to drink water. We need to take care of ourselves. Well, light therapy is another source of giving energy back to the body. So in a longevity sense, I would say that laser therapy or light therapy can help in that way of supporting the system, enhancing circulation, enhancing energy levels, reducing inflammatory process, and depending upon the type of color that you're utilizing in light therapy can also depend on the type of stimulation you get in the human body.
And are there better frequencies of light for the longevity play than other spectrums?
That's kind of a tricky question. Yes and no. Because it depends on, longevity. We need to make sure that we're creating a terrain or an environment in our body where it can heal and regenerate, right? So if we have some kind of an infection present in our body, well, then blue and ultraviolet light might be very helpful if we're talking just about light therapy. If we're talking about other types of things in health, it's a whole other field, right, that we can go into, which is really fun, talking about light therapy and integrative therapies. That's a whole other conversation, which is really fun too. But yes, it would depend. I would say mainly in the regenerative medicine type thing, most are using the full spectrum of light or focusing mainly on yellow light because it's such a mood enhancer. And again, enhances serotonin, dopamine. Also infrared because it's an anti-inflammatory, penetrates, and red is it's excellent for circulation. But if you look at green and UV as well, they have their own health benefits. So it's kind of hard to say one's more beneficial than other.
Sure. No simple answer. That's great. What are you both most excited about the field right now?
I'll jump in. So one of the things that has always been intriguing is how physics is finally making friends with medicine again. Mm-hmm. And, we look at things like how our body communicates and how it's so much faster than electricity could explain, and how light is really becoming a messenger and it carries information and it can rearrange information. And so that in a lot of ways is super exciting because it gives us a tool that whether we want to look younger, feel younger, have a better mood, have, stronger muscles, a faster brain. Like, we can play with how we're applying it. And it's not, like I said, there's not a ton of side effects from that. If you don't go crazy with too much power, when you keep it, and I love low level, it doesn't take a huge amount of strength to have these things. It's like a subtlety. And so for me, the more we keep seeing like how things play together, how we can enhance the effect of whether it's a medicine, an herb, oxygen, etc., with light, to me, that just opens up. It's only as limiting as your creativity is. So for me, that's super exciting.
Awesome.
I would say I'd have to back up what Angie just said. I think the most exciting part right now in this field is seeing how it integrates with other types of therapies, finding that sometimes less is sometimes more, and that the field is opening more to the possibility that light therapy is the medicine or the Star Trek medicine of the future. And I think we've overlooked it for quite a while. And I think we're just starting to realize how it actually can be utilized. And the fun part is that the research has only just begun.
Yeah.
We're on the precipice of what this is doing.
That's, it's really amazing to hear, like in the early 1900s, the Russians were doing some they were doing IV therapy with light. Yeah. Did I hear that correctly? In the 1900s. So that was a while back.
1910 or 1920. I've got to go back and look, but if you go all the way back, they were doing a lot with red light therapy.
Yeah.
It was quite impressive, actually.
Wow. It, and here, 100 years later, we're just getting it out. It's kind of maybe the cultures are more open to it, maybe is the way to think about it.
I think so. And I think, like, as Andy was saying, physics and medicine and science are starting to bridge together a little bit more now, and there's more awareness than there was before.
Yeah. Coming down the home stretch here, is there anything that you would like to share with our listeners and viewers? Any health tips or words of encouragement or wisdom?
I think something I'd like to share is to remind the listeners that you've got to take care of yourself. We've all learned that the hard way. You've got to make sure you're staying on a program that works for you, whether it's dietary, supplemental. Make sure you're staying hydrated. Most of us don't remember to drink enough water these days, or even take enough exercise or go out in the sun. The simplest things that we can be doing for ourselves that we're forgetting. And I think that we are so stressed out about the current situation in the world that most of us are actually not paying attention, or we're paying so much attention that we forget the simple things. So I think that's one thing I would leave to listeners, and not being scared to ask questions, not being scared to pose questions, and not being scared to research. And don't believe everything you read right away, but at the same time, make sure that you actually look into it, because some of it is so far out there that it actually does work and it's real.
That's awesome. Nurse Andy, what do you got?
I would just say to remember that we are all in this together, and that the grace and love we all share is real, and that you always have power. Sometimes I think that it's very easy to feel disempowered, and that, the right tools will come in the right way from the right people, and that, we can all guarantee things will continue to change. And so just, sending everyone a big hug and a lot of grace, because I think we all could use a little bit more of that every day.
That is for sure. Well, I have so appreciated you both coming on, and listeners and viewers out there, if you like today's show, please think of 2 people in your life that would appreciate a little nudge from you to say, hey, I just listened to this great podcast with Dr. Greg on What the Health, and they are talking about light therapies, and our family may benefit from this. Let's check it out. Get into that dialogue with them, and, be the hero in your community for your family and in your life, and, take that initiative. They'll appreciate it. So just think of them and share this show. And if you like the show, please go out onto your favorite platform and give us a 5-star review and say why. Because people read those reviews, there's not enough hours in the day, so they don't want to be wasted with blah. And I really want to bring you the cutting edge information. I'm a take it to the people type of doctor, so we want to get this information out because it really does make a difference. And we are living at an amazing time. And so just sharing that love with folks is really important. So everybody, Dr. Greg, What the Health, thank you both for coming on today.
Oh, thank you.
And
Thank
we
you,
are
Greg, for all you do.
Thank you. This is the Contact Talk Radio. We are here Tuesdays, 2 to 3 p.m. Pacific time, live on the air. We'll see you next week. Thank you.